The Reaper King. Traditionally a Scarecrow tribal commander, a 5 mana 6/6 with all the Scarecrows you control get +1/+1, and whenever another Scarecrow enters under your control, destroy target permanent. But we don't care about any of that. We will not be playing any Scarecrows, and all we care about is that we can play for 5 mana, but it actually has a mana value of 10. And not just our commander, our whole deck is built around playing cards with big mana values to draw cards, cascade, deal damage, and more. This is why our deck has a whopping 5.11 as an average mana value, while most decks hover around 3. So let's see how we're going to take advantage of that by looking at our card draw. Rush of Knowledge is a 5 mana sorcery that draws us cards equal to the highest mana value among permanents we control. One with the Machine and Traverse Eternity do the same, but for artifacts and historic permanents respectively. That means that for 4 or 5 mana, we get to draw 10 cards, as long as we have our commander in play. We also have 2 versions that work even if our commander isn't in play. Staying Steady is an instant, though also loses us 10 life. And Imposing Grandeur is a symmetrical effect that lets everyone discard their hand to draw cards equal to the mana value of their commander. These cards work great as the fuel for our deck. They also often chain into one another, and we're going to take full advantage of the amount of cards these draw later. Because our average mana value is so high, we're also going to be playing Keen Duelist, Twilight Prophet, and Protection Racket. Keen Duelist lets us and an opponent each reveal a card from the top of our library, and we take damage equal to the mana value of the other's card. And Twilight Prophet reveals a card in our upkeep and drains each opponent for the mana value. I'm assuming we have the City's Blessing. Finally, Protection Racket is a lesser known card that in our upkeep reveals a card for each opponent, who have to each decide whether to give us a card or take damage equal to the mana value. Pretty terrible if we hit a land, but they probably won't pay the life if it's a big card, which means this can draw us up to 3 cards a turn. Palantir of Orthanc is similar in that it also gives our opponent the choice of taking a bunch of damage or giving us a card, letting us cry too while we do it. They might not give us the card the first time around, which on average already loses them 5 life, but I've never seen someone take the risk of losing an average of 10 or more life just to deny us 1 card. And if they do, all the better. Glob is a frog that takes advantage of our big cards by letting us play lands and cast spells with mana value 4 or greater from the top, and even enables himself by being able to tap for Surveil 2. What a fantastic frog. To facilitate these kinds of effects, we're also playing Scroll Rack and Brainstorm, which let us manipulate the top in a very flexible way. Up the Beanstalk is a modern all-star in this deck by drawing a card whenever we play a spell with mana value 5 or more, and even draws a card when it enters. The Great Hands, Pride of Hulklade, and Dig Through Time are some big spells that can easily have their cost reduced while giving us value. The Great Hands is a staple you might know, drawing whenever a non-token creature enters. The Pride of the Hulklade is a Simic Abomination that can draw us 15 cards when it hits a player, and Dig Through Time is a draw spell that's currently banned in Modern and Legacy and restricted in Vintage because of how efficiently it gets you 2 cards from the top 7. Let's look at some of the ways we're going to turn our spells into win cons by looking at our damage dealers. Psychosis Crawler is going to be a huge boy that can deal a collective 30 damage when you cast one of our draw 10s. And Prophet's Eidetic Memory is an enchantment that, at the beginning of our combat, is going to give us one of our creatures a +1 counter for each card withdrawn beyond the first. It also replaces itself when it enters and gives us an infinite hand size. That by itself would almost be worth playing because of the abundance of our big card draw in our deck. Here we have some more big boys, assuming we have our commander or some other big thing in play. Dodgy Jalopy is a vehicle. It's easily going to be a 10/5 with trample for 3 mana, and it even has Scavenge. Tangleweave Armor is a 4 mana 10/10 that can also be used as an equipment, and Glintraker is an 11/3 flyer that can dig through the top 11 cards to find an artifact, milling the rest. Some other big boys that can power these cards are Galta, Primal Hunger, Shadow of Mortality, and Emrakul, the Promised End. Galta and Shadow are just big guys who can easily cast for 2 mana and can swing in for a bunch of damage, while Emrakul can be a bit of a toxic card by stealing another player's turn on top of being a big flamplay with protection from instants. It can be pretty reasonable to cast once we have a bunch of stuff in the graveyard. At least I get an extra turn after. 2 more cheap big mana value cards. Excalibur is gonna be free most of the time and give a creature plus 10 power and vigilance, while the Skullspawn Nexus is an artifact that can serve as resiliency for our big dudes by making a dude that's just as big when they die. And can also just straight up double a creature's power by paying 2 mana. File Smasher is a gnarly goblin that's gonna throw the mana value of the first spell we cast each turn at an opponent's face. Play Galta for 2, deal 12 damage. Play Dig Through Time on another player's turn, that's another 8. This guy is not chillin'. Some other cards that work well within our theme. Favor of the Mighty is gonna turn the biggest guy into a Progenitus Light by giving the creature with the biggest mana value protection from all colors. Note that this is a symmetrical effect, so this can backfire if an opponent is playing Eldrazi Tribal. Sign of Draco is more of a modern card, but it also works great here. Assuming with all land types, it's going to be a 2 mana 4/4 flyer that gives our creatures a bunch of abilities, notably hexproof if they're blue. Emoti is a 5 mana 3/1 with Cascade that also gives all our cards with mana value 6 or greater Cascade. Not much to say, pretty great on its face. Well, Sunbird's Invocation is an enchantment that's really cool, but usually too slow to make the cut as a 6 mana do nothing enchantment. In our deck, however, it's pretty easy to cast it and cast a big card right after, which can immediately pay for itself while being a must answer threat. Majestic Genesis is a Genesis wave that always hits the top 10 for 8 mana. Also not much to say, cool beans. Healing Technique is a recursion piece that can gain us a ton of life if we need it, while also being able to serve as a political tool by working with our opponents. Finally, Energy Tap is an old card that lets us tap one of our creatures to get an amount of colorless mana equal to the creature's mana value. So this is usually just a 1 mana ritual that gains 10 mana. Yeah. Interaction. Some board wipes. Vanquish the Horde and Blasphemous Act are easy includes. Big cards that wipe the board for cheap. And Yugin can almost act as a one-sided board wipe if we have a bunch of big dudes. Snuff Out and Submerge are both instant speed, free removal spells, while still having a big mana value. Here we have some counter spells. The Spiritual Shield is a meme card that lets us counter any spell with a mana value less than or equal to the greatest mana value among permanents we control. And Arcane Denial is just the best 2 mana counter spells in the game. You can fight me on that. And Commit to Memory is a mana value of 10 when we reveal it from the top or wherever, while both being an interaction piece and a potential wheel from our graveyard. Curtain's Call kills 2 creatures for 3 mana at instant speed, pretty good rate. And Volcanic Salvo is pretty similar, usually killing 2 creatures for 2 mana, though being a sorcery. Leyline Binding is usually a 1 mana Oblivion Ring with Flash, and Bolt Bend can act as a pseudo deflecting swat, though you could replace it with that because it's obviously better. Druid of Purification is just a generically good removals piece that can blow up a bunch of artifacts and enchantments. A Vision of Ruin can make each opponent sacrifice an artifact and gives a treasure for each artifact sacrificed. It can also be cast from the graveyard for 2 mana to act as a ritual while blowing up a bunch of stuff. Now some ramp, so we can actually play all the cards we're drawing. Some 1 mana green ramp, some 2 mana rocks, some land ramp, 2 Bloom Tender effects, and Lotto, which should give you a bunch of mana as well. Here we have some cute dogs. Gilanra draws us a card when we use its mana on a spell with mana value 6 or greater. And Runadi is a dog that buffs our big dudes. For example, if we cast our commander, it's going to give it 6+1 counters and haste, which is pretty cool. Now for the 1 Scarecrow in the deck. I lied. I'm sorry. Black Market Connections is an enchantment that can ramp us, draw a card, and make a 3/2 changeling in our upkeep in exchange for life. If we have our commander out, that means blowing up any permanent we want while getting mana and value. Lands, we need them. Fetches are even better than usual, letting us change the top of our deck, and the deck thinning can actually matter with the amounts of cards we're drawing. Every time we fetch, we also increase the average mana value of the cards remaining in our deck. Some shocks to fetch for, an island, and finally a triumph, so we can more easily get 5 land types into play. 2 of the 3 5-color lands. We also have the Lord of the Rings land cyclers. If you play Pauper or Legacy maybe, you might know these act as pseudo fetches, basically letting us get any color land for just 1 mana. Lorien Revealed in particular is also a pretty good card if we're low on cards for some reason, being able to tip us over that edge into drawing more of a card draw to get us going. Some of the big NDFCs to up our mana value. Seagate Restoration is just an all-around great card draw spell that also gives us an unlimited hand size. Turn Timber Symbiosis is kind of whack, but it does have mana and can come in untapped. And Undo Inversion can be a wipe for all non-land permanents if we need it, which I have used to win the game before. Otawara and Boseiji are basically MDFCs with no downside. Reliquary Tower is another way to give us no maximum hand size. And finally, Cactus Preserve is a cute land that can turn into a 10/10 beater for 3 mana. And that's all the cards. I hope you enjoyed. Maybe even feel inspired to build this deck or something similar. I tried cutting down on the runtime on the video by not reading every card's text. Please let me know what you think of this in the comments below. And of course, thanks for watching.